Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the R Squared podcast. My name is Rajat,
Yo, and it's your boy Rishman over here. What's up, everybody?
and today with us we have Mr. Murtaza Fazl Hussain, who is a behavioral scientist currently based out of Kenya. Murt, thanks for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Now, Murt, behavioral scientist, that's a very interesting job title. And so could you
Mhm.
expand a bit more of what is a behavioral scientist?
Okay. Uh, so, our job, in the simplest term, is, I guess, to figure out how people actually make decisions. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Is no matter what kind of field you're in, there's the very human aspect of decision making, and decision making is guided by a lot of like rational and irrational components. So the rational being the logical thinking that we have, and then the irrational being the emotions, experiences, beliefs, etc. that we have. So my job as a behavioral scientist is to essentially understand for a problem what is the decision making that a person goes through to come to the solution of that problem. So for example, like if a farmer goes through a drought, right? A lot of people kind of offer them insurance as a kind of safety mechanism, but they don't understand what decision making or thought process a farmer actually goes through. Like, what are there are like existing risk management kind of strategies within the household or the community. And it's my job to understand that and then integrate it into the different interventions that we create for these at risk communities.
Okay, so how are you then now implementing that in your as a profession?
Yeah, so I guess the way, like initially I was in health, and the way it works is basically an organization will come to us and they'll come to us with an intervention. So, for example, Save the Children will come and they'll say that we're trying to either teach women how to feed themselves properly during pregnancy, like eat the right diet, or feed the right diet to the child during complementary feeding, but we've been failing for a really long time. And it's because they kind of design the intervention in the like global north, and then they come and implement it and assume people kind of behave the same way, which isn't the case. So a lot of their interventions fail. So like in Mozambique, they'll build a hospital and kind of offer something to the woman to incentivize them to come, but they don't realize in that community or household the decision maker is the father, or the father of the child, or the husband or the grandfather. And so he has like a yes or no definitive answer whether she can go to the hospital or not. So if he says no, then she just doesn't end up going. And so they built tons of hospitals and they weren't utilized. So what my job would be is I would come and they would say, we want to try to solve this problem. We design an intervention for them. We do the research for them, if it works or not, and then we do the implementation phase as well. Or and then after that we kind of do a follow up. But it really depends on what the client needs. Sometimes they just want like the research and the intervention, and then they implement it themselves.
Okay, and then how are you finding out what those mitigating factors are to on which to base the intervention on? Because I guess there are okay, in the sense you know that okay, it's more of a patriarchal society, so the decisions are all with the men. But in other senses, how are you able to identify what those roadblocks are?
So we use a lot of like qualitative and quantitative data to figure out, yeah, what are the factors. So qualitative is very helpful because we'll do FGDs and ideas in its simplest form to find kind of understand how people make decisions, or like what are the factors. And then from there we actually have like a lab in Nairobi. We design lab games. We design kind of applications and like interventions like financial diaries, etc. And we use all these methods to kind of gather data that will then help us inform what needs to change in an intervention. Like if it's regarding kind of like the financial diaries where you keep track of your finances, you kind of get insights into where people are spending money. And from there, you kind of figure out if we want to put in a financial intervention, this is how we incorporate it within the daily lives of individuals.
Okay. And what regions have you sort of explored? Because I know you do a lot of traveling. So is it mainly in Africa? If so, which countries? And if South Africa, again, which sort of countries are you traveling to?
So it's anywhere in the global south. So we do a lot of work in Africa. That's our priority countries, and a lot of funding like World Aid, um, yeah, the USAID, sorry, USAID, World Bank, all Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They have a lot of mandates focused on interventions in Africa, and they have like specific areas. So that's where our work focuses. But then the global south is very extensive. So there's projects in South America, there's projects in like the Philippines, Nepal, all those communities, India. So anywhere you that is quote unquote the third world like country is where we would work and where we do projects.
Let me ask you. So, like from your experience in all the areas and regions you work in, what seems to be the most problematic, difficult, or challenging, so to say, area, and why? Like, what would be the reason for that?
Like, so I guess it depends on what issue. Like, depending on the issue, it would change. But I would say currently, um, it. I feel like it was Mozambique because I think Mozambique itself is a very resource poor country. And again, it just has the typical kind of issues with like government, corruption, etc., resource kind of hoarding. And so there's a very small sector of it that's developed. So whatever we implement, we have to take that into consideration. Something as simple as like a lot of areas don't have network. So if we want to implement anything on the phone, we need to kind of take that into consideration. And all those things kind of play a very big part in making it challenging. Because in Nairobi, you can find a lot of communities who are at risk, but they do have access to resources that we never really think about. So if you go to a lot of places in Kenya, they're yeah underdeveloped, but they will have access to things like light or network, and so you can actually implement things like even if we're doing a USSD program, it's easier to implement. But those are a lot more challenging in places like Mozambique.
It's amazing how much you're actually helping so many people. So, one thing I want to ask you, for all the listeners actually, is what would you recommend, or how would you advise them best if they want to assist, or participate, or get to know more on this, because they might want to really try and assist with this. So how can they make an impact?
So my honest answer would be that we don't make an impact. Like, in all fairness, like as much as it sounds like very good work, I don't think there's actual impact. So, for example, I'll say that like in health, what we would do is we would design it, and we gave it to like Save the Children, we gave it to the UN, we gave it to UNICEF. But if we go back to those same locations, I don't think we can pinpoint a single person who actually kind of got that intervention or whatever we designed. And I think it's because for a lot of them, it's a funding kind of opportunity. So what they'll do is an organization will come and they'll tell us we want X, Y, and Z. We'll design it, but for them, it's basically something that they just want to report that they use in the proposal for their next cycle of funding. So it's not real. Like sometimes they'll actually kind of secretly kind of nudge you towards what their outcome is because that's where they're getting money from. So for example, if their mandate or their funding is coming centered around like water, which is like what, for example, USAID is giving them money to do research around water. And then they tell us that water is a very big issue in Mozambique. We're trying to solve this. Pregnant women aren't drinking enough water. They don't have access to clean water. And then we'll go there and we'll realize that they probably have access to that, but they don't have access to like proper transportation or infrastructure to help them get to the hospital. But then they'll slightly nudge you to move them back into the water sector. And even if there's no issue, they would like you to frame it in a way as if there is an issue, because then they can use that in their next proposal to get funding from the same mandate. So I feel like I've realized it's a very
Okay, that's very okay. That's interesting, but it must be a bit frustrating, though, no?
yeah, it is. It is a very frustrating experience because you kind of know that you can give it to someone and there's no impact. Like you'll do a lot of hard work, you'll realize the struggles people are going through, but people are more focused on how they can ensure money's coming in because their jobs depend on it. Like if funding gets cut, then a lot of stuff gets cut. So that's just, I guess, like the business nature of it. But I would say that that was in health, and now that I've transitioned to more insurance work, the projects we have are a lot different. It's more around creating, like, for example, like one of our projects is to actually create a company at the end of it, and the company is supposed to help like at-risk farmers, agents, because a lot of insurance products and risk management products are sold through agents, and the agents kind of have a bad working environment. So we're trying to redesign the whole agent model, and that will end up as like a company. So that seems more impactful than just putting out a report and hoping someone implements it.
Okay.
Nice.
So what's then so what's actually then the end goal for these organizations? Like so they get the funding and then what?
It's to make the smallest minimal impact, I would say. Like that's the goal of theirs. So like if you have like like yeah, like if we're trying to solve world hunger, right? And then someone gives you like $1 billion to go solve it. What they'll do is they'll try to solve it in like one small country and then ask for more money to continue solving it. They'll say, just to solve it in Kenya, we need $1 billion. So yeah. And then, like, for example, if they come to Kenya and they realize there's no hunger problem, or we tell them that there's no hunger problem, they'll nudge you to be like, no, there is a hunger problem. Figure, look deeper. There is a problem there. And then,
There must be politics in play then, no? Like, sadly, as much as because a lot of money is involved.
yeah, no, there's definitely politics. Like, for example, certain people will make sure that you, like, even if it's not in the contract, they want to report by like August because September is when all the funding goes out for a lot of organizations. So they need to have a
For like USAID,
yeah.
right?
So
I know September is where you apply.
exactly. So they need to have a report by August because they need to make sure that they're already asking for more money. So the goal is to kind of show that you're making a change, but on the smallest scale because you want to keep asking for more money.
Oh wow, that's
Wow.
crazy.
Okay. Interesting. I never even like thought there was a thing. I think we all live under the impression that all these big organizations are, you know, getting all this funding and putting it on into these countries, but clearly there's some sort of bigger play involved, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. But let me ask you. So, like, from your opinion, your honest opinion, how would you try to change it? I know it's difficult, but like, if you had a free will, a free hand, how would you actually try to change it? I don't know if you can say it, but I mean, yeah, it'd be good to hear that.
Uh, Man, that's a very difficult question. I think honestly, I don't know how I would solve it. Like the best way to solve it is using, I'd say, behavioral science, like actually understanding the needs that people have. And even though I'm painting a grim picture, there are a lot of organizations who are looking to create a change. So I think it's about like putting people in charge who are willing to be like, I'm going to solve this problem, even if it means I'm out of a job, I guess. Like that would be the simplest thing. Like you have a 3 year contract, your job is to in this small region solve the issue of water or like wash practices, and then you just solve it and then that's it. Like you're not constantly looking for to make sure that the problem is lasts as long as possible.
Yeah. Do you have any like names of people, organizations who are actually making this positive impact? Like, maybe something you want to share about?
hmm. I would say so. I think like a mistake I'm also making is like I'm saying the organization name and then it's just like everyone in the organization is like corrupt or has this agenda. But I think
Fair, fair.
within each organization, even if it's the UN is such a large body, so even within that, there are small sects and small people who are actually dedicated to creating a change. Like for
Of course.
example, we like this project that we have regarding farmers and agents and redesigning the agent model comes from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and it's basically this one guy. His name's Neil, and him being like, "This is an issue I want to solve, and I don't want to report at the end of it. I don't want it to be like you come and tell me what next steps are. The next steps are that they should be a thing that farmers are actually using to solve their issue." And so within this giant organization, there's one person who has a vision about what he wants the end product to be. And like even within my organization, like my VP, she has the same kind of view as well. Like for her, a report is not satisfactory. As a the company that we are, we should be putting out like actual solutions. If it's in the form of an app, if it's in the form of a company, like we're trying to figure out how to redesign the savings program for at-risk communities, and the goal is to actually form a mutual company, like a company that offers mutuals. So I think within these large organizations there are small sects of people that are actually committed and dedicated to creating a change. And I think the best way to create a change is to actually create products that are well tested and put the user at the forefront of it. Because people come and they just create an application and they'll be like, people will use it, and then no one uses it. And it's because they've never put a farmer at the forefront of it. Because for them, there's a lot more expenses than just insurance, for example. Like they'll have school fees, they have mouths to feed, they have so many different variations. Like even when it comes to something as small as seeds, like they need to make, if someone's coming and telling you these are drought resistant seeds and like they're good for you, what is the guarantee that you can give to this farmer, because his livelihood actually depends on those seeds. For you it's like a business case and it's a use case, and you'll go and you'll say, oh, our drought resistant like seeds did X, Y, and Z, but for them it's actually their livelihood. If it fails in any capacity, then they don't have money for the month or for that period. And so I think taking into consideration the people we're actually trying to help is very, very important.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Do you have like one example of something that you have worked on, which you've seen, being implemented, and then that's actually made an impact on the community?
Yeah, so within this project where we're creating a company for agents, the goal is that we work with four agribusinesses, and there's one company that basically does offer, what they do is they have a really good quality of seeds that are drought resistant, and they offer it based on the different locations. And then what they do is they create a savings program. So they know that what happens is an agrovet will buy a ton of seeds. And then what happens is closer to the market day, or like when they have to actually plant, the prices skyrocket. So what they do is they offer you a price at like a fixed cost. So it's lower, it's cheaper, but it's also fixed. So no matter when you purchase it, the price will always be the same. Like the demand will not inflate the prices. And they have a really good savings program. And we just finished phase one with them, and now we're doing phase two, where we're doing more counties and actually making sure that the farmer is the one benefiting from it. So for example, this time there was this issue where an agrovet will we basically buy the seeds, right, and they have the branding on them, and they're just a storage kind of place. So they store the seeds, and then the farmer will go and redeem it once the savings program or savings period is over. But what the agrovet did is just sell all the seeds. Like for them it's inventory. So if someone comes and they need a bag of seeds, and you have a bag of seeds, I don't care if I promised it to keep it for you. It's ready money right now, so they'll sell it. And we like the company was really good enough to actually reimburse anyone who kind of faced an issue where they didn't have seeds available, because for them the goal is to actually create impact and make sure all farmers are secure. So losing trust breaks their model. So they needed to make sure they retain the trust of the farmers so they can continuously create impact. So now with that we're in phase two, we're kind of following that and kind of problem solving and making sure more and more farmers are guaranteed to have seeds to plant, and then they have good seeds to plant as well, so that they get the largest output when they actually need to harvest whatever crop they're growing.
And is this happening? Is this in Kenya?
Yeah, it's in Kenya.
Okay.
So
Okay,
yeah, our job is
nice,
to fix it in Kenya first as a blueprint. So all the companies are working with are in Kenya.
nice. And are these projects that you start, let's say, in a small region or in a country, are they easily scalable to multiple countries and multiple regions?
Yeah, so that's always the goal, is like no matter what work we're doing, we're always creating a blueprint, because the idea is that this should be transferable to other countries. But we have to, like, it's a very like skeletal, I would say, kind of framework, because as soon as we move it to another country, the dynamics are completely different. uh, the way farmers purchase could be different, the government approvals, the dynamics between government and county, and then the farmer are completely different. So the idea is to understand, like, in Kenya, if you understand what the barriers are, the idea is to refine that method of finding out what the barriers are. So we know the barriers might not be the same in another country, but we've developed a tool that's good enough that we can easily go and find out what the barriers are and then redesign the whole thing very quickly to start implementing in another country. So yeah, the goal is always to be scalable, because yeah, you always want to create change or like implement whatever is working in other places.
Interesting. Let me ask you something. Okay, this is regarding because of the fact you're based in Kenya, and for those who don't know, like Kenya's situation economically is horrible currently. Like, it's just bad. So I don't know. Is that affecting your ability to operate, or your organization's ability to operate? Because it is, uh, you know, it's very constrained in terms of an economic situation in Kenya.
No, I would say our organization is doing pretty well. Like in Evan regard, like I think it's just because it's dependent on, it's like a non-profit. So for their objective is not to make profit
Right.
first of all, and then they're purely dependent on funding. So there's a lot of, yeah, there's just funding coming in. It's like a startup. Like,
Wait, so then if it's heavily dependent on funding,
mhm.
so now a situation whereby Donald Trump has come in and he said he wants to stop giving out a lot of money from the US to other countries. Do you see that
Yeah,
affecting?
so that affects us. So for example, if now the stream of US aid kind of it becomes smaller, then it becomes more and more competitive. So, like for example, if they have 60 million to give out to multiple companies for multiple projects, it would come down to 20 million. The projects come down from like 30 projects to 10 projects, and that means you're competing for 10 projects. So, I think then it becomes a lot more strained, and you also have to be more and more selective of what kind of work you're doing. But the good thing is that there's, and I didn't know this until I joined as well, is there are just so many streams of funding. Like Europe has so many like strong streams of funding. Africa itself has so many strong, like really really good like foundations where they're donating money, and like there's a lot of philanthropy work going on as well. So it is a very unfortunate situation, and it will impact us. But I think it also depends on what kind of work you're doing, like, and what the, like, yeah, in 2025 USAID will be told that our main goals are inclusive finance, like health and social inclusion. So anyone who's not in that will then now suffer, because the reduced funding has mean they're focusing on less areas. So then you have to find other sources of
Oh wow,
income.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then you also mentioned, also you're working across different regions, you mentioned South America, Africa, India. What are some of the cultural differences and cultural challenges that you face, like within these regions? What sets South America apart from Africa and from India, for example?
So there are a lot of parallels, I think. Like household dynamics can be replicated a lot. Like for example, a household dynamic you'd find in Kenya is one you can find in India as well. Like the where the man is the decision maker, etc. Like breaking the boundaries of like gender violence, etc. Like the thought process that happens is very very similar, but it's governed by different rules. So for example, like here it might be that it's the community leader is the one that governs like it makes him the decision maker. So he's following a very different set of rules where for the prosper of his community, he's making sure that all, like if there are limited jobs, it's only given to men, because in their mind the men will produce better results and then it will thrive the community. But for example, if you go to Somalia, then gender plays a very big, not gender, religion plays a very big role, where now the religion plays a role in the decision making. If you go to India, same thing happens where the religion plays a very big role in how they think. So those are kind of the factors that exist. But there are also really, really good examples to learn, I think, from other um, communities. For example, I was recently in Nepal, and there's this incredible like organization that kind of offers insurance to individuals affected in the Philippines. Um, and what they do is they have such a good system that if you lose your house within 24 hours, you're paid. 96% of their claims are paid in 24 hours. And it's because, and they're purely working on a volunteer system. So what happens is the community will be there, and then they'll have like an insurance scheme or like an insurance product sold, and it's distributed through mothers. So there's a very good book called Covering Nene, which kind of um, goes into the insights of how it works. But it's just
You said covering,
Mhm.
covering.
Covering Nene. So it just means covering
Nene.
mothers. Nene means mothers. And the really, really interesting thing is that in Southeast Asia, there's a very kind of like communal, altruistic, like I would say, like belief in them where they take care of each other. It's inherently kind of ingrained in their culture.
Man, that's amazing.
Yeah, so they basically just do it for free. Like all the volunteers do it for free, and the way it will work is when the tsunami, like let's say a tsunami hits, for the company itself, you don't need to prove, like if you go to someone's house and the house isn't there anymore, that's enough to pay a claim. Like you don't need to sit there and prove that your house is gone. So what we'll do, if it's like a small town, the volunteers will go to each person's house, and as soon as they report it on their app that their house is gone, they instantly get a payment within 24 hours. And it's an incredible system, and it's purely based on because they just want to make sure members of their community are okay. Like that's it. They don't work for money. They have like incentives and stuff like that, but they're not paid. They just purely do it for their community. And something that I learned in Nepal, which I really want to bring to Kenya, is we're trying to solve the agent model as well, and they use agents as well. So how can we actually replicate this altruistic nature of them and bring it to Kenya? How can we make it so that it's very, very successful because we purely just care about our neighbors? Like there doesn't need to be like I need to pay you to go confirm something for me. It's just you're doing it because you want your community to thrive. So I think a lot of really good examples that you can learn from of how to create a system that makes a change is Southeast Asia. They just have really, really good like companies and organizations doing great work.
Right, bro. Honestly, it's amazing to hear that the fact that you want to bring such systems here.
Mhm.
I mean, all the best to you as well. I'm sure it'll impact everyone that does support you on board with it. It's a really good idea, to be honest.
Yeah.
It is very nice.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess that's where I mean, the behavioral scientist part comes in, right? To understand what what are the factors that affect decision making and then the behaviors of certain individuals. Because obviously you mentioned Southeast Asia. I guess that's a cultural thing which is ingrained in them for centuries, and now to bring that mindset and ideology to a different region is obviously very challenging, right? And so, guess getting um, people to completely shift their way of thinking is part of that behavioral scientist job description, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it is. Like
Mhm.
you're right, it's ingrained in their culture and it's been there for so many years. Like it's kind of innate, you're just born with it where you do it. So how can you teach someone that other people are born with, right? So it's a very
Yeah.
challenging task, but I think if I would recommend one book to read, I would say read Covering Nene. Their system is incredible. And so if we don't take the
Right.
things that are working in other countries and try to replicate it, I think then we're kind of failing as well. We're only focusing on the negatives of what didn't work rather than focusing on what's working and why it's working.
Okay. Nice, nice. I mean, since you also mentioned the book, there's a book that I read a few months ago called Irrationally Yours. I don't know if you've read that. It's by this guy called Dan Ariely. He's like a behavioral economist. Um, and so he talks about a lot of the things that affect our decision making as humans. And so, like just a couple of examples that I can remember from the top of my head. It's like when we are giving a gift to someone, we it's people receive gifts more in physical form than in better in physical form than in cash form. So if I'm going to give you a present for your birthday, if I give you, let's say, $100, you'll be like, oh, I didn't really put much thought into it. But if I give you a present worth $100, you're like, oh, wow, that's really cool. That's nice of you. So it's just how people represent different things. Another interesting thing which he said was, let's say you're going to a party and you know there's this like girl you like. One thing he said was, go, if you're with a friend, go with someone who's just a bit less good looking than you, so then in comparison to that person you would seem more attractive, because then if you're with someone who's better looking than you, you're going to be the not so favorable one. So it's another book I would recommend, actually. If
What you're saying actually is very true. The first point, especially, we practice that physically, in a different sense, kind of like in Kenya. What happens is every time elections comes about, all the political parties, everyone involved in politics, loves to go and ask for funds. I mean, it happens everywhere. Those funds are given by people, companies, businesses, whatever, and then they spend it on. Well, we don't know what they spend it on, to be honest. So what we do is we don't give money. We give physical items such as blankets or masai shukas, things like that, where there's actually accountability of it, because they're not going to keep the blankets or misuse them. They're going to end up with an actual purpose, and it does have a better use case to it, and it also creates goodwill. So and like you're saying, that if you give them say $100 or x amount, we don't know if that value is considered low or high to them. So that whole judgment factor, it disappears if you give them an item rather than amount, because it may be this much this time, and the next time if you give lower, again it causes issues, judgment issues and problems, which it's all mental. But again, that same issue you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. That book talks a lot about the difference between uh, drawing the line between professional and personal relationships. So, like for example, let's say, Rishi, you're selling me like a Masai Shuka, right? I'm your friend, so you probably give it to me for free, right? If I'm like,
No, I'll double the price, my friend.
okay, let's say you're giving it to Murtaza. But if you're giving to someone like a family member, you just give one to them, right? But let's say it's worth, I don't know, for example, it's worth how much is a Masai Shuka worth? Like, how much are you selling it on retail?
Okay, if you're talking about dollars, you can say around $4.
$4, right? So
Yeah, on a high end.
so
Yeah.
if you give it to someone for free, and the guy is like, I'll give you $1 for it. I don't want to give it to you for free. You'd be like, "Ugh, what the heck? What's $1? I mean, why would I mean just take it for free?" But so it's either you would want to sell it for $4, or you would give it for free. But the $1, $2 in the middle is like, I mean, it's so breaking that professional and personal relationship barrier. But on the flip side, what that book also said, in companies, a lot of people want raises, right? They want a raise in their salary, they want a bonus, they want cash incentives. But if the company gives cash equivalent incentives, such as, let's say, I don't know, a Christmas party or like an insurance scheme or something, people aren't that happy, right? They want their reward in cash because it's a professional setting. So just, yeah, that behavioral aspect in various scenarios is also very interesting, I think. Um, more so I'm also interested in how you got into this field, because you studied neuroscience, right?
Mhm.
In at university. So, can you sort of talk a bit about why did you choose neuroscience, and then how did you get into this whole behavioral sciences path?
Yeah. So the neuroscience question is very easy. Um, I think I've always been fascinated by like the things that don't make sense to us. So like I love reading like about like astrophysics and like quantum physics because there's just so many unknowns in that and just no kind of clear answer for a lot of things about why a certain thing works the way it does. And I think if you take that and kind of think about the brain, which is an organ that is not very big, and we still have so many unanswered questions about it where we fully don't know how it works, when like if you have so many unknowns about a black hole, fair enough, it's very inaccessible to us. But you're telling me we have so many questions about the brain that's very very accessible to us. So to kind of study such a complex organ and is yeah was the kind of thing that drove me to this. um, then it just happened that I ended up coming back to a country where neuroscience is not very big. Like that's just the reality of it. So yeah, eventually I was kind of looking for what can I do in the same kind of field. And yeah, I ended up kind of talking to someone and they recommended this company. And then yeah, I kind of joined it because I think
Right.
it's not that far from neuroscience, but there's still like a lot of neuroscience work. Like a lot of the reports are right will focus on neuroscience or cognitive science, and yeah, just figuring out how does the brain actually work for different people.
Okay. So now, can you tell what some general things about the brain, about the way our brain operates that because the normal public wouldn't know? What are some things that you learned in your studies, your experience that I guess happens on a daily basis that we aren't aware of?
Um, so one kind of very interesting thing that has been a topic of discussion is that there's nothing like a rational person, and that there's the whole debate about whether you are your brain or is your brain you, or like who's making the decisions. Are you making the decisions, or are you just becoming aware of your decisions? And it's a very fascinating debate because in essence your brain has already made a decision before you know about it, and it makes a lot of decisions because like if you're making like 20,000 decisions every day, it's a very significant cognitive load. So how do you your brain kind of makes a lot of the things for you, like rule of thumb, like you don't think about the way you brush your teeth or the way you ride a bicycle or the way you eat eggs, whether you will eat eggs with a spoon or a fork, and it's just because everything is stored and the brain makes a decision for you. But then it comes to the more complex questions is like, does it exist for everything? And the answer is coming to yes. Like two things. First, your brain has already made a decision and then you become aware of it.
Another interesting question, which actually comes from my mind quite a bit, is in all the decisions that we make, we are all selfish by nature
Mhm.
because ultimately the whole definition of selfish is you're doing something like for yourself, something for your own pleasure, right? So if you're, let's say, uh, so the whole aspect of, for example, let's say donating to charity is considered, uh, I guess, very selfless. And if you and let's say you don't, you're not giving something to a poor person, you would be considered selfish. But would both decisions be considered selfish because both are things that you want to do, and if you're sharing or not sharing, and is that if it's your choice, and if it's something that pleases you, aren't both selfish in nature?
Yeah, they are. And that's why there's the case that true altruism doesn't exist because altruism is
Mm.
supposed to be like something that you do with no gain to yourself. There's always an internal gain. Like even if it makes you feel good that someone else is feeling good, that's still a reward system. Like even neuroscientifically, your reward system is like activated during this action. So clearly there's like a feedback mechanism where it's encouraging you to do this and you're getting kind of a pleasure out of it. So there is no real thing like true altruism. And yeah, I agree with you. There's like no matter what you do, there is still some bit of selfishness ingrained in it. I think it now just becomes on a spectrum, is like what kind of selfishness are you experiencing? Like you're allowed to feel good about yourself if it's at someone else feeling good, you know? Like it becomes an acceptable level of selfishness. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, correct. And there's another thing where it's it's a lot to do with economics and finance of things. It's where we as consumers are all irrational. If you think about the things that we buy,
Mhm.
the 90% of things that are things that we don't need, right?
Mhm.
We buy things which are irrationally, well, we don't really need them. They're not requirements, but we still buy them. But the irony is that the whole economy and the whole world runs on this irrationality. If we as consumers were rational and only bought things that we needed, the world wouldn't run. And so I guess that's the whole irony of the economy and the world that we live in, is that we need this irrationality to for the whole economy and for society to function as well.
Yeah. Uh, there's a very interesting point to that where, like, the thing I was kind of mentioning before about the irrational person, like a rational person not existing. And that's a very big argument we have with people in finance, because finance is where the rational person model came from. Like people who invest in stocks and stuff like that, those are the rational people. But now there's a very clear understanding that there's just nothing like a rational person, and we're all functioning on irrationality, and the decisions we make are already based on ours. Like there's so many rule of thumbs and heuristics that we use to make decisions every day, and that's what guides us. And it's so subtle in the way, like behavioral science can be so manipulative in a way. For example, like this is an example I give a lot, is in a supermarket you'll realize everything is color coded. And so if a supermarket, like if Tesco ever wants to sell something, they'll always put it next to a, like they'll design their wrapper to be very similar. For example, if it's chocolate, they'll design it in a way that it sits next to dairy milk. So that's the most popular chocolate. I don't know what it is in the UK, but they'll design it so in a supermarket they'll sit right next to it, and that influences your decision making. So you'll automatically go to like the dairy milk chocolate, you'll see that the color of it, and then you'll be like, what are the alternative options? And then you'll see the price change, and then you pick the Tesco chocolate because it's cheaper, but it still triggers the same kind of reaction in your brain because of the color scheme. So though I would say we're all irrational and we consume irrationally, but like companies have really figured out a way to profit on that irrationality and kind of also sell
Yeah,
it as rationality to us. Like even if it's a sale, right? For us, we think it's so rational that a TV that's 9.99 is 6.99, so I'm saving money. Like that's a very rational decision. But the way companies kind of design these things is to kind of feed on your irrationality.
yeah, yeah. No, that's that supermarket thing actually is also very interesting. I also saw one with Lidl, which is obviously like a discount store. So what they do is that they have a lot of their own brands, so whether it's alcohol or chocolate or food, and they make the wrapping very similar to big brands, right? So just so you're there, you know it's not the real thing, but it kind of looks like the real thing, and you're sort of like tempted to buy it. And the other thing is they put, I think if I remember correctly, is they put the price tag on top, because as consumers we generally look at the price at the bottom, so we generally see the wrong price, so it's actually the price on top, whereas we are looking at the price tag on the bottom of the shelf. And so then when we come to check out, it turns out to be something else. And another thing is, I don't know if it's actually true, but in a lot of supermarkets, you put the main essentials at the back of the store, and so you actually need to go through the whole store and see all these things along the way before you get there. And so yeah, things like that. I just said how they play with our irrationality as consumers is good. Interesting questions to think about. for sure.
Yeah, like even the way they price, like put those banners or whatever, it's always
Yeah,
like Coke will pay money to make sure it's placed in a systematic way. So when you're going to buy soft drinks, you're just getting primed consistently to buy Coke. So
right, right,
like
right.
that's why data is so influential, because even data about how people navigate a supermarket is very influential.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Um,
I hope you're talking about the liquid Coke, eh?
no
I'm not going
comment.
to disclose my sources for the non-liquid.
Fair enough.
Nice,
Fair enough.
nice. Wish you have any other questions, or shall we get to the
No, honestly,
final
that was
segment?
very informative. Very, very, very
Yeah,
informative. Really good. Really deep convo, no doubts. But I think
yeah,
that was really good.
yeah. Very, very insightful. Actually, there are a lot of things that we didn't know, and yeah, thanks, thanks for your insights on this.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. But yeah. So now on to the final part of the show. I think a lot of people enjoy this. It's a few rapid fire questions. 7 questions, just random. Answer them as you may. All right. So the first one is: what is the most interesting place you've ever visited?
The Philippines. The Philippines was really incredible. I think one of the most beautiful places I've
What reason?
visited. Very beautiful, like, and the activities I did there, I feel like I haven't done anywhere else, like swimming with the sharks, stuff like, yeah, there's this incredible canyon that I'm not sure, but it has like blue water in it, like glacier blue water in it, and you just kind of hike through it and swim through it, and you're jumping from different cliffs into the water, and it's an incredible experience. The people are amazing. Yeah, everything was just wonderful about the Philippines.
Nice,
Nice,
nice.
nice.
All right, on to question number 2. What is your dream company to work at?
My dream company to work at, I don't have one. My dream job would be to be unemployed. I really don't like working. So if I,
Interesting. That's fair
yeah,
enough.
if
Interesting one.
US8 could just give
Um,
me the money and allow me to retire, I'd be very happy.
yeah, that's very interesting. All right, question number 3. How do you handle failures or setbacks? Bit of a deep one, but yeah.
Uh, hmm. I'm trying to think of an answer that doesn't expose me on the internet. Um, I think I think having a really good support system is has helped a lot. I think there's been a very huge chunk of my life where I've been comparing myself to others, and the success of others I kind of portray as the failures of mine. So it's been a very difficult road to kind of come to a balance where, like, I focus on just my own goals and my own failures, and then having a really good support system to kind of help me work through it, because I think it gives me time to focus on my own failures rather than looking at someone and being like, I haven't achieved what he has, and making those failures kind of mine. Because I think there's no way I can solve it. So focusing on the things that I'm doing wrong and figuring out where I can improve, and having friends and family who are very honest with me has been very helpful. And that's kind of how I deal with it. And crying in the shower.
There's
Nice. Yeah,
yeah,
that,
that for sure helps.
fair enough.
Yeah.
There's a quote that I read like a few years back. It's comparison is the thief of all joy, and I read that and I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of
No,
sense.
honestly, it's a fact. And honestly speaking, nowadays, all this like TikTok, Instagram, all the reels and stuff, everyone just prejudges you or compares yourself, uh, others literally to what they've seen online. So everything has a
Don't
bar
Yeah,
raised. So there's no pressure
don't
just
forget
mentally.
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is also a deadly one.
Yeah. Honestly, LinkedIn is the worst
Yeah,
place, man. I hate visiting it. I never try to,
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't have
Same.
the app anywhere because I just hate opening it.
Yeah. But okay. So now, next question: if you could have any superpower, any one superpower, what would it be and why?
I would definitely like to fly. I feel like, yeah, flying is very annoying. Like, the act of flying to another place is also very annoying. And then you get there and then they ask you for visas. But if I could just circumnavigate that and land in a country, that would be great.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
good. That's good. All right. So, what is your go-to karaoke song?
Man, it's really funny because I was actually asked this question very recently. Anything with Bruno Mars. So yeah, I feel like he's
Grenade, grenade.
no. I'm more of like a
Uh,
fun karaoke person. So his latest
uh,
album, like the 24 Carat, any song from that,
uh.
because like I think there are a lot of like really nice jamming in there. Mm.
All right.
I feel you do really good with
All right.
Yeah, it's really funny because my friends and I went for karaoke. Well, we didn't go for karaoke. We were just at someone's house, and we decided to have impromptu karaoke. And I tried to sing it, and in my head, I was like, I can hit the notes that Bruno Mars is hitting and Rose is hitting, and I actually just sounded like a parrot who had like bronchitis. It was actually very, very funny.
All right. Second and last question. You said which country you love the most, but this is the opposite. Which is the one country you never want to go to? You can give the explanation to that if you want.
Egypt or India. Like
Fair enough.
Wow.
Fair enough.
I've always maintained those because I think they're very similar, and the reasons are the same, which is like super hot, super crowded, and I feel like it's just not for beginners, like navigating those.
That's
And
true.
I'm definitely a beginner at life. Like I can't be like I remember I was in India and I was on a scooter and I genuinely thought I was gonna die every second, and I was like, I can't hack this place. And it's the very same for Egypt as well.
Yeah, fair
Mhm.
enough. I've been to both, and yeah, I get what you're
Yeah,
saying
it's not a lot of fun
in
for
that
me.
aspect. All right, on to the final and last question of the evening. If you could travel back in time, what period would you go to and why?
Hmm. I would go back to. I'm trying to think about if there's a time I find interesting. I feel like I would just go back like maybe 10 years. I think I would just go back to talk to myself and tell him on how to make sure that at the same time that I exist, I am unemployed because I figured out a way to retire. Like, I don't
Interesting.
think I care
Yeah,
enough
fair
about
enough.
history enough to go back to any other point, but any point that would benefit me would be very nice.
I mean, I like it because, in a sense, you make your own history,
Yeah.
right? So
And
that's good. That's
I
good.
mean, I could also recommend myself to not be friends with both of you. That would be a very good decision too.
Oh, well, you didn't get the opportunity to be on this podcast then, so I think ultimately it's your loss.
Okay, fair enough. I see the
Uh,
point.
the-
I retract that previous statement.
No, but yeah, that honestly brings us to the end of the rapid fire questions,
Mhm.
and yeah, that's about it from my side.
Yeah, no, this has been a great episode. We, again, learned a lot of new things about, what, not just behavioral science, but just the whole, the funding aspect of things and how foundations work in all these so-called third world countries, as you said. And so, I don't know, thanks a lot, Mort, for your time. It's been very, very helpful.
No worries. Thank you for having me on. I've been patiently waiting for my invite. Every time I see R&R go up, I'm like, next week will be me. So now that I finally got the invite, I was like, I'm going
Yeah,
to be on it. I'll make time.
yeah. Yeah, we had to get the Rust.
No, but as usual,
Yeah.
to all the listeners out there, if you do want to join or be in touch with Murtaza, we'll pass the message on. I don't know if you'll get a reply, but we will pass the message on.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but feel free to join us.
Yeah, and to everyone else listening as well, like the podcast, subscribe on YouTube, give us a rating. Thanks for listening so far, and yeah, we will see you in the next episode. Bye bye.